Do you think that we shouldn't
Okay,
shelter people seeking need?
okay, we'll take shelters out of the equation. Would you house an illegal immigrant in your home?
I would house a person who's come through the normal vetting process for sure, and I might
I said
house a
illegal.
stranger.
I said illegal.
So I might house any stranger in my house. It would depend, right?
I
So
mean, I believe
that's where
it
it
was
becomes.
homosexual acts, of course, but I mean,
There's third
people.
genders, fourth genders, fifth genders, people who are who we might classify as hermaphrodites. Yeah, all throughout history. This is
What is the fourth gender? What is? Oh Lord, have mercy,
so
man.
dependent upon where you are. I think
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
I think that's the most important thing these days, right? Is like having these exchanges. So that's why I
Hmm.
joined that one meetup. That's why I kept like harassing you on X.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, man. I'm
No,
not
it's
really the
cool.
I have to get more into social media for sure,
Nah.
man. It's
No,
just a
don't
lot.
do it. Don't
I
do
know, right? That's what I'm saying.
it.
As far as just for like just to interact with people, just to be more well rounded with individuals and stuff like that. Because
Sure.
I have to at least like try to make some type of connections with someone. I'm not like on like social media like posting anything like that, but you know it's just a far marketing and stuff like that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation, right?
I know, right? Like I think people will ask me sometimes, they'll say like, "Hey, is social media, do you think that social media is the downfall of like everybody?" And I said, there's a lot of bad that's come with social media. But if you just think about all those people you couldn't have spoken to, all of the like kind of worldly perspectives you couldn't get, the research you couldn't have. If you're using it for those things, that's
Mhm.
amazing, right? Like
For
building
sure.
connections. If you're using it to isolate yourself, to just echo chamber, or to not go outside anymore,
Right.
um,
Just basically being a rock in the house. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's more of a problem, right?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, but then it's just like it's just a lot of dark things behind social media that people I'm sorry, excuse me, that people don't really know about. As far as like there's just a lot of child trafficking that goes on under social media. A lot of I honestly want to say a lot of teenage girls in America, like they a lot of I would say self-inflicted deaths. I can't really say what I want to say, but like they it, majority of it comes from social media because they're exploited all throughout of the internet. And once, because I can't imagine something like that happening to one of my family members, or God
right,
forbid one of your family members, and they're just embarrassed to even show their face in public because
right.
it's just so ashamed. So it's just a matter of just keeping people privacy, because social media have just so much access to everything, as far as your name, first and last name. They got your phone number, they got your email address. I mean, that there, I mean, all they missing is your social security number at that point. So it's
Sure.
like, man.
I agree with a lot of those things. The thing that I would probably, I don't know, disagree with is that although social media does allow, like I think we had this conversation before, but of course no one else has heard it. But
Hmm.
um, if social media were today, if social media is used to traffic people, then at the very least you have a record. And you can follow that, and you can actually get that information, and you can try and do something about it. You can actually get law enforcement involved. When child trafficking was, and kidnappings and all those sorts of things were actually at their highest points, which is decades ago. We
Right.
didn't talk about it, right? People went outside and they went to school just fine, which is great that they went outside. We should do more of that today because it's relatively safe, right, to be a kid these days, comparatively. But really, what's going on, like at the very least, social media lets you track it versus just sort of disappearing decades ago. That would be an
Right.
advantage. The disadvantage, to your point, is that there's a lot of perhaps inadvertent even giving out of information that allows crimes to take place, or allows bad actors to gain information that they
Exactly.
otherwise wouldn't have had. They would have had to go through your trash to find the same level
Yeah,
of
for
information.
real.
Yeah. And luck out, because generally speaking, one piece of paper doesn't have everything on it, but one social media account has everything on it.
Right.
Right.
I mean, yeah, there. I mean, there's some truth to that, but it's just a matter of just a matter of just decency at this point, though. You know what I'm saying? Because I believe, well, like they haven't really heard what we talked about, but
Hmm.
as we were talking about before with the whole Mark Zuckerberg thing, when he showed up to when he showed up to the Washington D.C. and basically Ted Cruz, he was asking him, why would you give we don't know if they're like predators or not, but let's just say they are predators. You know what I'm saying? Why would you give them an option to see results anyway, or what I'm saying, report like harassment or something like that? Why, first of all, why would see result anyway just be an option, like regardless, if we know this is like sexually exploited, you know? And my thing is just with Meta in general, like I just feel like there's a we it's just a dark secret that we all really don't know about, because there's just so much corruption when it comes to the government, and we all know that the government is using social media to use their narratives as far as silence, basically trying to get rid of free speech, because we know you can't really say anything on social media if we're being honest. You know what I'm saying? Like they're trying to use social media for just so much things, and I just believe that it's not really gonna end well for Americans, because at the end of the day, like, everybody like have the right to say what they want to say. Now, I don't really believe that you can say anything that you want to say, but you have that right. You just have to be responsible for what you say, you know?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so in part, that's the kind of a different version of that. You can say whatever you want to say, but you are not immune to consequences, right?
Hmm.
For instance, like if you are working for Nike, and you were trying to sell like a different brand shoe for them or different clothing line, for every single person who came through the door, they should be able to fire you, but they shouldn't be able to put you in jail for that, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, but that's the thing, though. Like, you kind of do need a job, though. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Sure. Yeah.
if
I definitely need a job,
you know
right?
what I'm
I've
saying? So
got
it's
one,
like,
but I always need to keep it.
right, right. That's what I'm saying. So, and speaking of jobs, they have these workplaces to where, like, let's say you have a person who's transitioned, I'm gonna say,
Sure.
and you have one woman here that's not really comfortable with that situation, and that person that transitioned wants to enter that bathroom. Now, if the woman really doesn't feel comfortable, and we don't even really know this person that transitioned, this person could be anyone. You know what I'm saying? This person could be an axe murderer for all we know. Now, if that woman doesn't feel comfortable, goes to her boss and says, "Oh, I don't really feel comfortable with this, person in the bathroom with me." Would it be right for the woman to get fired?
So I don't think it's right if a person brings any concern to the proper chain, right? If they're following the proper path inside of an employment chain, then they should never be fired for that, regardless of whatever their concern is, right? They could come in and be like, I don't, HR, I'm sorry, but I don't think enough people are doing, heroin in the bathroom. They could have that concern, right?
Right.
That ludicrous of a concern. But as long as they went to HR to it, they didn't just start handing out heroin to everybody, and they weren't going into the bathroom and saying you need to do heroin, right?
Hmm.
Then they're following the proper path that the employer even set up for them. So to me, that would be a break of kind of the employer's contract if they were to fire the person. Now, unfortunately, we live in a lot of in the United States, at least, we live in a lot of places that are the kind of, it's not just right to work, but it's like voluntary work status where basically you can be fired at any time for any reason. If there is no cause given, you can get unemployment. That's the only safety net you get, right? So,
Hmm.
as an employer, if you were to say the sky was purple, I could actually fire you, just not for that. I would just have to say, I didn't fire him for any particular reason at all, right?
Right.
Um, and that would be enough in most places in the United States. Um, so that's where the problem comes in. So that woman in that hypothetical situation should not be fired for coming in and saying, "Hey, I have a concern or I feel uncomfortable," because this other person, regardless, they're transitioned. They may be an axe murderer. They're not doing enough heroin in the bathroom. It doesn't really matter the reason, as long as they're following that path, right?
Right. As long as
Um,
they're doing the right thing, yeah, I believe I honestly like agree with you when it comes to all that. Like if they're being like a law abiding citizen,
Hmm.
I don't really mind them, living. Like a lot of people fail to understand. Okay, I guess we have someone else in here. Hello, how's it
Hello.
going? So, a lot of people fail to realize that um we don't really have like a problem when it comes to a person being a law-abiding citizen. On the other hand, if we don't really know like the background of these people, like I mean, me personally, like you said, and you can agree that you don't believe that woman deserves to get fired for that, because I mean that's a personal thing with her that she has the right to feel uncomfortable with, correct? Now, if,
Yep.
now in my opinion, like yes, they're law-abiding citizens, but I mean, are we really going to fall like into their delusion though? Because we do know, like, I mean, we can keep all the biology stuff out of it, like with the XY chromosomes, double X chromosome. I'm not really gonna get into like specifics because we all know, like, those people don't really care about that stuff, man. So I mean, but if we're just talking strictly logic here, like why would you have to transition yourself? If Because the argument with these people is always that, oh, I feel like this or I feel like that. Well, if you feel that way already, why are you transitioning to something that you already feel like you are? You know what I'm saying?
Sure. I don't know if we're trying to like do rounds or circles, but I can certainly respond to that. So,
Oh, no, no,
well,
I'm sorry, you can respond. Go ahead.
okay, cool. I know it was kind of more freeform, but I just wanted to make sure. So as far as all of those points go, right? So,
Mhm.
if a person's in a workplace, I mean, you can be sort of forced to say various things as part of your employment, right? As long as it doesn't actually break the law. So you can't be forced to, for instance, lie, although you can be forced to say agree with or support numbers that you don't exactly have access to or can create, right? So in a
Mhm.
way, that could be like a false statement, and then it's up to you whether or not you want to stay employed with an employer who may not have the highest of integrity, right? So just to get that out of the way, there is certainly a case to be made for that shouldn't be the way businesses are operated, and I agree with that. So whether or not we could enforce that legally would be really questionable, right? To the other point, as far as kind of the more general social question about transitioning, the idea isn't just, hey, I feel this way.
Mhm.
It's that inside of the societal structure that we have, I feel like I'm over here more than I'm over here, and other people cause this disconnect for me, because when they look at me, they see me as a man or a woman, regardless of whichever way you're transitioning, or either one of those if you're non-binary, right?
Mhm.
So I choose to go out and make a decision where I then alter myself so that I don't have that disconnect between um, the societal existence and my internal existence, right?
Mhm.
If we could all, just our feelings made reality, or our feelings made existence fine, um, I don't, I don't think we'd ever have a problem with anyone who ever had any concern or issue in society, right? Um,
Mhm.
for me, it comes down to whether or not these things should be legally protected. That's the question I have. We know psychologically people have documented things like gender dysphoria. We have people who are just transgender who don't necessarily have gender dysphoria, because
I
either
got
they
a
didn't.
question about that
Yeah,
too.
go
You
ahead.
can keep going. So you say gender dysphoria. So do you believe that
Sure.
gender dysphoria is a mental illness?
So gender dysphoria is in the DSM, right? Which is
Hmm.
the Diagnostic Statistics Manual for Psychology, and that would be a specific mental illness. But all transgender people do not have gender dysphoria,
Okay,
and
no,
all
no,
people
I'm
who
not
seek
saying
to
they have
physically
gender
transition
dysphoria,
don't have
but
gender dysphoria. Yeah,
so what would you call it? Like, what would you call it if it's not gender dysphoria? Then what is it?
sure. So this is where we get into like the long history of complicated social identities. And this
Is
is
it
part of.
complicated for you or just for
No. I call it complicated because it is you'll have on one occasion people will say this is not a historical thing, and then if
Right.
you actually look into history, transgendered individuals have existed throughout all of time in almost every single society across the earth for thousands of years.
I
So
mean, I believe
that's
it
where it
was
becomes.
homosexual acts, of course, but I mean,
There's third
people.
genders, fourth genders, fifth genders, people who are who we might classify as hermaphrodites. Yeah, all throughout history. This is
What is the fourth gender? What is, oh Lord have mercy,
so
man.
dependent upon where you are in the world, right? This is why I'm saying, like, if you
What
believe that
I'm
there.
saying, what comes after
Mhm.
a man and a woman? Like, what is after that? Like, I'm just not understanding.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, first you'll have the larger group, which is like non-binary, right? Which is someone who doesn't identify as either a man or a woman.
So what is,
That's
okay. So when a person identifies as non-binary,
mhm.
what does that mean exactly? Does that still mean that they're a man or a woman? Do they just not claim the title, or do they
Sure.
really believe that they're not a man or a woman? Like, I'm kind of confused.
So it might be helpful to talk about a little bit of language. So this would be a semantics piece, but it's important. Um, so when we're talking about words and what they mean, right?
Hmm.
They can fall into basically three different categories. You could have like a hard science or hard data based information. You could have a legal understanding of the word, right, which requires some kind of barriers and definitions. And then you have a social definition of a word. And I can give you a really quick example that doesn't rely on gender. So for
Okay,
all
I'm
of
listening.
time, we have legally acknowledged and accepted and backed a social identity that people can claim at any point in time that indicates their truth of the world.
Such as
With
what though? Like
exactly,
example.
so religion. So no one is saying, hey, if you classify yourself as Christian, right? No one is coming up to you and saying, well, where's the hard science behind that? Where's the biology behind that? Or here, I'll even pull out 100 points of things you have to do
But that's
according to
the
the
thing though.
Bible,
Okay,
and then
okay,
I
but
can tell you whether or not you're Christian. I can't
okay,
do
but that's
that,
the
right?
thing though. See, you're losing me now because
Sure.
are you comparing being Christian to someone being like having gender dysphoria or someone being transgender? Because that actually can be proven by like through biology that's like someone is a man or someone is a woman. Like, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not really trying to dive into biology because I know how them people get when it comes to it. But I mean, we gotta like call a
We can go
spade a
into
spade.
biology too. So here's the problem, right? So when we think about religious protections, right? They're legal, and it's something essentially you could make up. No one can gauge it. No one can ask you how you prove you're religious, right? And yet we protect you if you claim to be religious and whatever religion you claim. Uh, by the law, the actual
But
law
isn't
protects you,
gender a
even from
social
your
construct
employer.
as well? Isn't gender a social construct to you? Like to
Well, that's the point, right? Is that religion is a social construct, right? So in that regard, if I claim myself as Christian, I could tell my employer I'm not going to work on Sundays because of a religious holiday.
Okay,
I
but
can actually
you can't biologically prove that you're a Christian. I can biologically prove that I am a man though, and like doctors and people who study the human body can prove like if someone is buried, like let's go back to like years ago, like when Mount Vesuvius wiped out everybody, and we have people that are basically buried under rubble, right? They pick up
sure.
their bones, you dig up their bones, right? You put their bones in the lab. If they identified as anything whatever when they was living, when that test result comes back, it's gonna come back exactly what that person was, whether it was a man or a woman. That's gonna be two options, man. So in my
That's not
opinion,
necessarily true.
so if you wait,
Yeah,
if someone dies and they
correct.
gets buried and they gets their DNA, it's gonna come back other than a man or woman DNA.
So here's the problem is that one, sex chromosomes don't necessarily dictate which genitalia you have, although it's very correlated. There's a high likelihood of what sex chromosomes you have equal what genitalia you'll have. DNA also breaks down over time, so if it's too old, we wouldn't actually be able to check. But there's also this really interesting thing that happens. So, for instance, if a woman gets pregnant, right, and it's a boy, and you test her for sex chromosomes beforehand, you're more than likely going to find XX, right? But you won't necessarily. That's not a given, but you'll most likely find XX. And then you test her while she's pregnant. Depending upon where you test her and how, she may actually have XY chromosomes functioning within her
this
body.
is before the baby's. You're talking
This
about
is before the baby is
a baby's
born,
born. I'm talking about
and
when
it's
someone's.
her body. But no, keep in mind, then she gives birth. You test her again. She may still have XY chromosomes. And the latest that a person had that was something like 72 that we know of.
Okay.
So
Okay.
so that's a problem. That makes it ambiguous. That doesn't defeat the point or anything. That's not to say like, oh, you can't do this at all, right? It just complicates the matter, right?
Right.
Now the question becomes really in society. So we're interacting, right? What pronouns would you use for me? This isn't a gotcha question. I'm pretty sure I'll say the
No,
same
I would
ones as
call
you.
you a guy for sure.
Exactly,
Trust me.
right? So I'm a guy. I identify as a guy, right? I'm imagining you do too, right?
For sure, yeah, for sure.
But I can guarantee you I've never seen your genitalia, right? And you've probably never seen mine unless you have a weird camera set up somewhere over here.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly, right? And 99% of my friends have never seen my genitalia in any way, shape, or form, not on purpose or on accident, right?
That's
And
because you look like a guy, though. You have guy features.
but people, and this just happened even yesterday. I walked into a cafeteria at a hospital, and the person was like, "How can I help you, ma'am?" Because I have long hair, and I cut my hair every once in a while, and I donate it. And I kid you not, just by cutting my hair, that stops.
Yeah, for sure, because women
Right?
naturally have long hair in society. Well, really all
Sure,
throughout
but this
history.
society, if you were to go back to
Okay,
like
but I
Roman
mean,
society and
this
or various other
society,
societies, right?
I understand what you're saying, but
Yeah,
this society doesn't really like, it isn't really the exception to the rule to like all of society in general throughout history. You know what I'm saying? Like throughout all of history, women had long hair. You know what I'm saying? So,
but that's
and
not
and,
that's
and
not
and my
true in
thing
every
is,
society, right? That's
okay,
that's all I'm saying. What I'm saying is that like we recognized these things without ever interacting with any kind of biological test. We didn't look at sex chromosomes. I didn't have to show you my birth certificate, right?
right?
Now let's imagine just for a moment, and this is just a matter of implication, because I'm usually a utilitarian. So in a lot of ways, I'm like, how would you even implement this, right? So
Hmm.
now you're the employer who had the problem where a woman came to you and she said, "Hey, I feel uncomfortable with this person who says they've transitioned. They're a woman. They want to use the bathroom." Okay, so now you're an employer. You have to be fair. You have to be equal across the board. You can't just do something for one person. How do
Or
you
make them use
check?
the bathroom that they're supposed to
But
use.
how do you check that person
I can look at
which
them. I mean,
bathroom?
let's just call a spade, man. I could look at a person and tell if they're. You can do all the altering you want. See, that's what I'm saying. Like, why are trans altering their face and their body and their hair to make them like their hair long? Why do they have to do all that? Because they know deep down inside they look like a man. You know what I'm saying? So they have to do
Sure.
the surgeries. They have to do the plastic implants. They have to do all this stuff because they want to portray themselves. This is what I call this woman face, because let's just be honest. If somebody was doing this and they wanted to be okay, look, let's just take gender out of it, right?
Hmm.
So let's say I'm a white man, right? And I painted myself with white paint and all this, that, and the third. And I basically act and presume, and you know what I'm saying, I act with the stereotype like how a white man is supposed to act. Would that
Sure.
be offensive to white people?
I wouldn't be offended. I would probably still think of it as like, what's going on? But
Okay, so
I don't really get
vice versa,
offended.
vice
So
versa, vice versa. Let's say
yeah,
you pretended to be a black man, which would
sure.
be ooh wee. You know what I'm
I would
saying?
have to have a really good reason, like Ray Charles, because he's one of my favorite
But
musicians.
listen
But
though, would you be offended though if okay, what I don't know if you know any African Americans, but if you do know any,
yeah,
would they be offended if you did that and showed up and be like, "Hey, I'm a black guy." You know what I'm saying? Like, would they be offended if you did that?
I would say there's a good chance. Yes.
There's a good chance. So,
Some
don't you
people
think
might be
that
like, "Oh, that's Danny being weird" or something like that. But
yeah,
yeah,
so don't you think that it's the same thing for trans when it comes to actual women. And then it's, that they're actually taking over women's sports too. We do know that these are, me
Yes.
personally, I'm not trying to, ruffle any feathers or nothing, but me personally, I feel like they still have an advantage against actual women because they still have testosterone levels. I know they take hormone blockers and this, that, and the third, but they still have way more testosterone than they do an average woman. The bone density isn't going anywhere. The
Height,
broadness in
early
the
strength.
shoulders
There's lots
isn't
of
going
things.
anywhere.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like they're gonna have the full advantage of this. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to sports, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Really anything. So I just have one more question for you. So,
Oh, excuse me. I
oh,
just
I'm sorry.
joined.
Go ahead.
I'm Amber. I'm not sure exactly what you guys are talking about, but it sounds like you guys may have been talking about the LGBT community.
Well, something like that. We were basically trying to say, how. Well, you're a woman actually, so you will actually be perfect for this. So, we were actually talking about transgender, people transitioning to, women or men or something like that, and
Hmm.
we were actually seeing if it would be offensive if you know what I'm saying, if it wasn't gender, if it was, color in this situation. So, I was basically saying if I, painted my face white, or if he painted himself, with a black face, would that be offensive? And I mean, we both could come to an agreement that yes, that would be offensive to both parties. So we're gonna ask you, an actual woman, do you think that, you know, people that are transitioning to women, do you think that is another form of blackface, but it's like woman face because they're kind of mocking women, or like how do you feel about the situation?
Um, Honestly, I feel exactly that. As a woman, it's just very like sometimes I can't even come up with the words to say it. Like it's just very disrespectful. Just as a woman, like I don't care what nobody says. Like as a woman, you're not even as you transition, you're never gonna actually be able to feel exactly what women feel. So it's to me, it's just like a slap in the face. Like,
Hmm.
and honestly, I can say the same for men. Like, women don't know what men go through. We can't feel what y'all go through. So, you know, men are always gonna be men. Women are always gonna be women. You can pretend to be a woman all you want. You know, physically you could try to be, or however you want to act. But at the end of the day, the way you were born, that's just the way you were born. And you know even still then, like it's just too much when it comes to that. It confuses the kids, you know
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
and honestly it makes kids uncomfortable. They're basically indoctrinating children, whether people want to admit it or not. It's just all child indoctrination when it comes to that, you know pressuring and pushing this on the kids. And
Yeah, they
now,
are putting in like children's books and stuff. I'm sorry. Go
and
ahead.
not even just that, now they're trying to basically like put it in the schools, and have you know bathrooms, uh
That's
it's
what we were
just too
talking
much.
about earlier too. Is it acceptable for a person who's transitioned to, like, let's say a person transitioned to a woman? Is it acceptable for them to use women's restroom? Would you want to see a person who's transitioned in your restroom?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not, because
Why not?
because
I'm just asking
at,
questions.
at the end of the day, you're still. I don't want to be in the restroom with a man, because you know, first of all, any now they have it to where anybody can identify as anything. So even if he isn't transitioning, he could just go in there and say, "I'm a transgender," just to go in the bathroom and harm women and children.
Okay.
So it's like it's
How do
it's
you
just unsafe.
do, do you want to respond to that?
Sure. So I agree that bathrooms are a place that need to be safe spaces, very much
Hmm.
so. Where I think it kind of gets more difficult is with children. You would actually want bathrooms either separated out, Or you would want bathrooms where a mother could go in with her son. And that would be difficult if a bathroom was hard lock restricted by sex. The other disadvantage would be that if you have bathrooms that are isolated by sex, how do you enforce that? How do you check? That's the question, right? Now, in most, a lot of people will be like, oh, well, you just don't use it, right? Like people don't use it today. Well, that's not entirely true. There's been plenty of people who have transitioned who have used bathrooms without anyone noticing or anyone knowing, because they're convincingly, for even your standards, switched over. Like you wouldn't be able to tell unless they let you know. That's where part of the difficulty comes into play. Now, it doesn't help, right? So, one of the things I did was I read J.K. Rowling's entire spiel about bathrooms, and she had been a victim of actual assault inside of a bathroom. And I'm not going to distrust her. I'm not going to say allegedly or anything like that. She said it. I'm going to accept that, right? Her fear over that scenario is legitimate. It's a thing that we have to account for, because it's the same thing on the other side, right? Like if a person's transitioned, they fear actually getting assaulted in the bathroom of their sex, and they don't fear getting assaulted in the bathroom of their gender. And it actually happens quite often.
Okay. So
right?
I have one more question on this topic, and we're just going to talk about one more topic.
Sure.
So if okay, let's say just hypothetically, right? We have a person who's transitioned right here, right?
Okay.
Now, and me and you are talking, and
Yep.
The person who's transitioned, they walk up to us in our conversation, right? And we're talking, and I end up calling that person a he, and you end up calling that person a he as well, and they get offended and say, "Oh, I'm not a he, I'm a she."
Sure.
Do you feel like, who do you feel like is in the wrong here? Do you feel like we're wrong because we're offending the person because we're not calling them by what they want to be called? Or is the person who transitioned wrong because they're trying to basically push their narrative out to the whole world into believing that the world revolves around them?
So
I'm sorry. I know it's like a group of people. Like, I know it's like, I'm not saying that, these people don't get hurt or these people don't, criticism or anything like that. But
and you're not even saying that everyone is that way. You're just saying in this
Right.
particular situation,
Just
what would be who's more right, essentially.
Who's more right? Okay, just in this specific situation, who's more right?
Yeah. So I think the way it works is this, and this is the same thing regardless of any kind of social identity, and I'll give that example as well. If you honestly make a mistake, you honestly made a mistake. If a person can't
But what
accept
if it wasn't
that,
a mistake, though? That's my thing, though. What if it wasn't a mistake?
Sure.
What if I just know this person is just trying to dress up like a female,
Sure.
and he's not?
So in those cases,
I have a question after that.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. No. Let Danny finish. Go ahead.
Yeah. So in that scenario, if you were intentionally using a word you know would hurt the other person, then you're in the wrong regardless of what word you use, right?
Is the truth hurtful though? Because
here's the thing.
Even
if I use the truth, right? Even if I use the truth, but I'm doing it intending to hurt another person,
it wouldn't be intentional. It would just basically mean I'm not feeding into someone's delusion. See, I'm not going to delude myself into thinking that you're something that you're not, because that's going to change a whole narrative when it comes to psychosis. You know what I'm saying? So if I know that that's what something is, like, that's just like me saying, oh, this is an apple, but I know it's an orange. That's basically that's warping the brain, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's nothing personal against you. It's just that I don't want to feel like I'm becoming cuckoo because I'm feeding into someone's basically, that's thinking that the world revolves around them.
So if we're having a one-on-one conversation, right, and you let me know that you're Catholic, let's say, I don't know what your religion is, but if you say you're a Catholic, and I said, oh, this is, my friend, and he's a Christian, right, and you're like, no, I'm a Catholic. I prefer to be called a Catholic, right? I have a couple of options there, right? I could continue to call you a Christian, or I could alter that and call you a Catholic. There's no way for me to gauge which one is correct There's only a way for me to either do what you're requesting me to do in the social situation or walk away.
See, but that's the thing. You're trying to compare religion to biology again. Like my
But
thing
but
is,
this isn't a biology. You're not checking the person's biology.
but I could see it though. I could literally tell that that's a dude.
It
You
isn't
know what I'm
hard to
saying?
tell, honestly.
I'm sorry.
I
Go
mean,
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead,
yeah.
Amber. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
you had a question though, so
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go
yeah.
ahead, Amber. I'm sorry.
So I was gonna say, you were asking like, like if it would be offensive, right?
Yes.
So would it be offensive to the person who birthed you for you to disown who you were actually born to be? Should they not be, able to feel no type of way?
Well,
I mean,
everyone can feel however they want to feel, right? That's not really up to anyone else to decide. So if they indicated that they had transitioned and their parents didn't acknowledge that, or one of their parents didn't acknowledge that, or didn't like that, or were, to your point, saying like, hey, I'm looking at the truth of biology here, and you were born with the capacity to make large gametes, and now you're saying, no, I only make small gametes. I'm recognizing myself or identifying myself with people who make small gametes. So a woman transitioning into a man.
but
In
the
those
thing is,
cases, it's
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I don't think that like that's not for us to decide. I can't decide how you feel about something. I
Okay,
can't
but
make
I
you
think the
feel
point she
something
was,
about
I
something.
think the point she was trying to really get at is, it's not really about feelings in this case. It's about what's real and what's not real. Because I can tell you, 2 + 2 is 4, correct? That
You
is a,
can.
but it is factually true, correct? Two plus
So
two
two
is
plus
four.
two is four. Yes,
Two
factually.
plus two
Yes.
is 4. Now you might not like that. You know what I'm saying? You might not like 2 + 2 is 4, but it is 4. Now you can still make the argument that, oh, 3 + 1 is 4. You know what I'm saying? And you know what I'm saying? But it's like at the end of the day, it's still 4. You know what I'm saying? You can alter yourself and make it different however you want, but at the end of the day, that's still what it is. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like, okay, I'm telling you 2 + 2 is 4. You're telling me 3 + 3 is 4, but it's still 4. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that just kind of equivalates to you're a guy. Like, you know what I'm saying? You have XY chromosomes, and it doesn't really matter how you alter yourself. That's where the 3 + 1 analogy come in. But you know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, you're still 4. You know what I'm saying? Now you can feel any way you want to feel about that. Like you said, like, now no one's like not telling you not to feel bad or anything, but at the end of the day, we still have to live in truth and reality, in my opinion, because if we don't, I mean, that's just going to come down to a crumbling society, because people are just going to start believing they can fly, and then they're just going to start jumping off buildings. And this is like, honestly, this is really harmful to like children in my book, like, because they're pushing this on kids into thinking they can be anything that they want nowadays. You know what I'm saying? Now it's cool, like back in the day, like, you know what I'm saying, if you want to pretend to be Spider-Man or Cinderella or Barbie or the Hulk or something like that, that's cool. You know what I'm saying? But to actually, you know, tell your parents, I think I'm a girl when you're a boy, like, I mean, me personally, that child needs like a lot of, talking to, because at the end of the day, like, that's just something you're just never going to be. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. I I I I get
Sorry,
what
I
you're
went on a
saying,
rant a little bit.
but no,
Sorry about
no.
that.
What I where I think that the breakdown is that you keep referencing sex and the truth, right? And I get it, right? Like we don't want to live in a society that isn't seeking truth or isn't understanding truth. The
Hmm.
downside is that breaks down in almost every single social interaction people have, right? If you're talking to your friend and your friend feels that when they were in a car accident, it was the scariest thing in their entire life, but everyone walked out just fine. Truthfully speaking, no one was hurt. It wasn't really a problem. And it wasn't, you're not really sure, like by the data, like if someone just handed you the car accident report, um, nobody got hurt. Nobody was even mildly injured. Even maybe the car was just fine. Who knows, right?
Right.
At the end of the day, to understand that person's experience and interact with them in a genuine way, you have to start where they are, not where you are,
Hmm.
right? And I think that is where the kind of confusion in the statement. Now there are people who have transitioned who want you to, regardless of what happens, they're going to get offended the first time you misgender them. They're going to not, give the credit that you're trying to be genuine. But at the same time, if you're genuinely trying to interact with that person, this is part of their experience. Whether you consider it crazy and they don't or not is kind of neither here nor there,
But do you
because we
think that's
don't
an
hold it in
exception
any
to
other
the rule, though?
situation.
I
It's not an
understand, but
exception to the rule.
okay.
Right? That's how we interact. If you tell me that there's an invisible man watching you from the universe outside of your perception and capacity to interact with, who is judging you morally based upon a book written 2,000 years ago, if you didn't know that that was Christianity, you would think that that's crazy. If somebody didn't put it in the reference of Christianity and just said, I think there's an invisible person watching me from my ceiling, you would think that person is required to go into an asylum. But if you don't stop and actually listen to them and see what's going on with them and interacting with them, you're never going to be able to get to a place where you can identify, oh, is this person seeking truth in some way that I didn't understand? Or is this person, genuinely crazy, right?
Right.
And needs help.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So
Okay,
that's where
so
I'm coming from.
we're gonna move on, man.
Sure.
We're just gonna move on to the last topic because we're definitely gonna come back to this, guys. We're definitely gonna have another one. So, my thing is with the border crisis. How do you feel about the border crisis that's going on in America right now? Do you think it's the Democrats' fault? Do you think it's the Republicans' fault? Do you think it's Greg Abbott's fault? Do you think the immigrants it's just too many of them and they're just, rushing our country, invading our country? How do you feel about this?
You want to answer first, Amber?
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
can.
Go ahead.
So I feel like it definitely they're trying to blame it on Trump, but it's definitely the Biden administration because Trump did his best to keep the border closed, and now first day they open the border and all these people are coming in, and they're trying to say like, oh, it's majority women and children when actually it's majority men. And
That
you
is
have
true.
these countries releasing the people that they have in prison because they know that the United States border is open, and they're sending all of their people, releasing their people from prison and sending them over here. We have women and children getting hurt. More Americans are becoming sick. And even then, the worst part about it all is not only are, the government funding these people, they're housing them, funding them financially, food, letting them get
Free
airplanes.
transportation on
Yeah,
buses and
like
planes. Yeah,
everything. When Americans can get nothing,
I
they
feel
don't
that.
help our homeless people. And it's like
Yeah,
it's horrible, and it's only getting worse, and it's going to continue to get worse until they actually do something about it. That's just how I feel.
that's a good answer. How do you feel about it, Danny?
So I think that we definitely have a problem at the border, which is to say that we have a problem in the United States handling immigration, which we've had since probably the founding of the country. So it's not really a new problem.
No,
And
it's
it's
not. I can
not
agree with that.
simply,
It's not.
and even when we look at Trump versus Biden, right now, Pew Research estimates there's about 10.5 million illegal immigrants in the United States. During Trump's administration, it fluctuated from a little bit above 10.5 million to a little bit below 10.5 million. So it's relatively the same. What is up dramatically and was increasing during the end of the Trump administration into the Biden administration was apprehensions. Now, apprehensions being up just means that we're catching more people, which makes sense because there was the end of the pandemic. There was kind of messaging that seemed to indicate come across, right? We'll not do as many things to you, and that we're understaffed. So with all of those things in play, there's a higher likelihood of people coming over. If you now start staffing better, you start apprehending more people. But even they'll say most, well, not most, but a lot of the people in which they're catching and then sending back are actually people who are on their second or third trip in.
But that kind of contradicts what the liberals are preaching, right? Because don't they support, well, they call it undocumented undocumented people. But don't they support immigrants that's coming from other countries and stuff like this? Don't they support no human is illegal and love is love and all this, that, and the third? I mean, I just
I
kind of
think that
find it
comes
funny that Joe
to
Biden.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I just kind of
Okay.
find it funny that Joe Biden, what I'm saying, basically opened the border day one, and he's basically flying in immigrants. He's flying in all of these people from Venezuela, from Mexico, from everywhere, and he's dumping them, in all of these democratic cities like New York, Chicago, Philly, California. I just feel like, you guys kind of are bringing them here. You know what I'm saying? So, don't you feel like it's kind of the Democrats' agenda to bring immigrants here to get, like, I don't know if it's, well, I believe it's for more votes, and I believe it's for cheap labor, but I just want your opinion on it.
So, I mean, I'm not aware of any scenario in which people were flying folks who were not legally going to be here from outside of the United States into the United States.
Well, Joe Biden definitely has flown in many immigrants. And when it came to the border thing with Trump, like when he was sending people back, because a lot of people want to say Trump was breaking up families, is this, then the third. That's because those people weren't related. Trump did a DNA test on those people. When it came to those adults and those children, those they were not related at all. So 9 times out of 10, those adults that had those children, they were coming there to traffic that child, or they were coming. They were not coming with good intentions. Joe Biden knew this.
So the question still remains: were the people that were being flown in illegal? Were they seeking asylum?
They were illegal.
Were they?
They were definitely.
How do you? Can you share that? Because I don't.
I mean, I could. I could, but I can just get into context. I mean, they're flying them into New York. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They're basically. There was one incident where they were basically telling the immigrants to go to Chicago, go to New York. These people will help you. These people will save you. I believe this was in Detroit, now that I'm mistaken. Now, if I'm not mistaken, this happened in Detroit. So they're basically just, it's kind of hypocrisy a little bit, because you guys are saying you support illegal immigrants, but you guys don't want to keep them. You guys are basically just sending them to all of the, the big cities. Joe Biden sees these immigrants and he's dumping them all in the democratic cities where, where these, where it could possibly manipulate the voting scale,
So they can't. There's some ability to understandably like change House representations. That's only once every 10 years, right? Because it has to be when the census is being done, and that can alter the number of House seats, right? And that's one of the concerns you have, I know. But when you look at that, when you actually look at the places that have potentially illegal immigrants in them, another Pew Research study was done where you're not going to see that clearly in just Democratic states. You're actually going to see it in Florida and Texas and a bunch of other places all throughout the United States because illegal immigrants don't stay. Yeah, sure. But what I mean is like that's a benefit. Now, this isn't a new thing, right? So immigration in this regard, with House being counted, dates back to the 1800s. They also had the fight.
I understand that. I know it's been. I wouldn't necessarily call it a problem in the 1800s because I believe 98%.
Abraham Lincoln thought it was a problem, and so did the Southern Democrats. It was one thing they did agree on, right? And the Northern Democrats. So all three of the major parties in 1860 all agreed that immigration should be stopped.
Yes, okay. Yes, it has been a problem, but it hasn't been this bad though. Like now it's terrible, especially with all of these terrorists, and it's like we don't even know where these people are coming from. That's the scary part. At least we knew that these people were coming from Ireland, that these people were coming from France, that these people were coming from...
You don't think that there was ever terrorists in Ireland?
I never said that. Okay. But I'm saying, though, at least we had... Look, when these people came back in the day, they were getting documented. They would at least, you know what I'm saying? People would at least know their first and last name. Were you coming to work? Did you have a family? Now, Biden is just letting them in. And there's no documentation on these people. I mean, they're wearing Biden shirts. So, these people are just wearing, Biden shirts just to get past the border, in my opinion. And it's like, you can't just say, oh, it happened back in the day. Like that's the same thing that we're doing now.
But that's not my argument. My argument is that immigration has been a problem for a very long time. Now, we were just talking about, right, in a transgendered existence, that there would be data, right? There's biology that you can look at that's scientific. You can see evidence of a person's sex. This is where I get confused with talking points from different sides. And this happens on both sides. It's not a uniquely conservative thing or liberal thing, right? If you're looking for data, hard data for someone to be able to use a bathroom, why aren't you looking for hard data about who's coming in, what
We
immigration
are. I mean,
looks
we
like?
actually do have the data. We have well over, I believe,
Mhm.
I say, going on 11 million immigrants as of this year. Like there has been, even in December, there's been more immigrants. Last year, December of 2023, there's been more immigrants coming into the country than American births. So more immigrants came into the country than people being born in December of 2023 in America. That's insane to me.
Now, are you saying both legal and illegal immigrants, or are you just talking illegal?
Illegal,
So
undocumented people that are entering this country.
I would find
Yes.
that very difficult to believe, because like the looking at the numbers, right? The total populations were, I thought it was something like 10.5 million, just 2023.
We're just talking about people being born just in the month of December, all in America. You know what I'm saying? And we're comparing that to the people entering America illegally, maybe legally
Right,
too.
right.
I'm
No,
not
I'm
sure.
I'm talking about the entering. So you're saying 11 million people entered
No, 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 no.
illegally,
No, no, no.
or do you mean that there's a
I'm talking
total
about
of
in
11
total.
million people?
I
Yeah.
said 11 million in total.
Okay.
11 million in
So
total.
so if you look at that difference from last year, 2023, the highest number that anyone has is 10.5 million people. So that's 500,000 people, right? So births in the United States. So births in the United States in 2024, or not 2024, 2023, because we don't have a full year yet, right?
I mean, you know what I'm saying?
So even if that was like 1% of the population being born, because I think we're at 1.8 or something like that in the United States on average, that would be what, 3 million people being born? So that's 6 times the maximum number that they're saying are coming in. Now, that doesn't mean that that's not a significant number. It just means that that talking point is an exaggerated talking point. I get the point of it. I get the in like the merit behind it. Yeah, so it's somewhere around 3.7 million people were born in 2023, according to this website I just looked up. I'm not doing a bunch of research on it to see like if that's a valid website or not, but that roughly tracks.
I don't know. I don't know if they was referring to that, or if they was referring. I don't know if they was referring to 11 million in 2023, or if they was referring
Sure.
to 11 million to Joe Biden just being president in general. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
well,
So
so that's the thing, is that when Trump was in office, it was 10.5 million people. As COVID hit, it dropped down to 10.2 million, according to Pew Research. It's very difficult to track illegal immigrants in the United States, right?
right.
But the best numbers we have are these same numbers, and they're pretty consistent in how they do that reporting. So you went from 10.5 down to the lowest number of 10.2 during the height of the pandemic, because no one could cross any borders. It was very difficult to get
Right.
anywhere or travel. So anyone traveling would be a red flag, right? And then it went up to 10.5 million again shortly thereafter, I think within like a year and a half, which is why we see such a huge influx, right?
Mhm.
And then it now, I'm not even going to research the 11 million number. I trust you. That's fine. Even if it's at 11 million right now, right? Which isn't the
It
highest it's ever
probably is. Yeah.
been. But it's higher than it's been recently, but it's not the highest it's ever been in the United States. If you get up to that 11 million number, right, then at that point, it's only 500,000 people from the previous year and a half. Now, I say only, not to diminish, make that number seem small, but to say that is a lot less than the talking points that I hear, and not from you necessarily, but from more
I know.
conservative
I
media, right?
understand. Yeah, from the
Like
people you talk to. Yeah.
we're like the mass media is going to say, oh, let's compare this one number 11 million with this other number 500,000, right?
Right.
And one looks way bigger than the other. Well, why do they pitch it that way? Because one looks way bigger than the other. And they may even have the real number. They may say 11 million total people in the United States. And over here, they'll say new, 500,000 people or whatever the case may be, right? The screenshot might be accurate, but the person speaking is trying to emphasize the variation and how that's really crazy. Right, like 11 million people have come in, and then if you look at births, you could say
the
3
media's going to
million
do
people,
anyways.
right?
Yeah,
Exactly, right. Then you say, oh, United States births, 3 million people. So if you compare, we only had 3.7 million births in the United States this last year, and there's 11 million illegal immigrants. That's crazy. There's more illegal immigrants in the United States than were born in the United States. Well, that was true all through Trump's period of time too. We had more illegal immigrants in the United States than any births we had.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But now they want to talk about it as if it's new or something new for Biden instead of the accurate number of saying, oh, it's increased.
I mean, it's not
200,000
people.
I mean,
they're doing more crimes than ever before, though. They were not this violent. They didn't have this much freedom. We're talking about illegal immigrants. They did not have this much freedom when Trump was in president. This leads to my last question, actually.
Yep.
Do you feel that an illegal should have more opportunities in America than an actual American who's been born here for, I don't know, 30 plus years?
So I think that Americans don't have enough freedoms right now in the United States, that they don't have enough opportunities, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that that's going to be a genuine talking. I think you're going to find that's true. Anyone you talk to is on the liberal side. We all think, generally speaking, that there are not enough opportunities for Americans here in the United States.
Okay. But my thing is, do you think that we should give it to the immigrants first before us? Because you do know that in places like New York, they're giving out free debit cards. They're giving out free food.
Do you know how the
They're
debit
filling
card
up
thing
all the
existed?
shelters.
Do you know why that exists?
I mean, yes,
why that program
I
happened?
believe they're trying to house these immigrants so they could get a vote from the Democrat.
Well, but it's not new.
No, it
It's
isn't.
actually
But I mean,
cheaper
it's like,
than their old way of doing things.
are we gonna destroy our country though, just so a farce party can just stay in power?
But here's the thing, like this is actually like New York, if anything, is spending less money today after the debit card scenario than they did prior to the debit card scenario. That's actually why they initiated the debit card situation, because previous to that, they were actually spending more money per person who was coming in seeking asylum than anybody today. They're spending less money, which is the goal, right? Like we want them to spend less money on immigrants, and so they have more money to spend on local people.
Okay.
They did that. It was a cost saving measure.
But
and
what about the shelters,
it's easy to track, right?
But what
so
about
it's
the
easier
shelters,
to track.
though?
What about the shelters? Do you think that we shouldn't shelter people seeking need?
Okay, we'll take shelters out of the equation. Would you house an illegal immigrant in your home?
I would house a person who's come through the normal vetting process for sure. And I might house a stranger.
I said illegal.
So I might house any stranger in my house. It would depend, right? So one of the things, I'm not Christian, but one of the things that I think is remarkable is that in the Christian Bible, right, they do recommend that you have, I think it's a candle and a stale piece of bread at your door at all times. And why? Do you know that story?
I'm not familiar with it. Educate me a little bit.
So this is the one where, and I forget which book it's in, but Jesus goes around, or the king goes around and is like, hey, and to you, you offered me a place to stay and a place and bread, something to eat, right? It was this idea that someone could come knocking, and that person could be Jesus, and you should treat everyone as if they could be God, essentially, right? That's the kind of metaphor, as it were. So you have
but realistically speaking, is everyone going to be God?
So people actually kept in the early days of these Christianity, like in Christianity, even in Greek society, people kept nearby their door enough for if a stranger were to come by, they could actually offer them aid. Now, I'm not saying that that's what everyone should do. The world has dramatically changed. Back in that day, the worst a person could have was a sword, and swords were really expensive. So they'd have to be a really rich, poor person, right, or homeless individual. That's not, that doesn't jive, right?
Right.
So but today it's really cheap to go and get a gun or to get a knife, like they're mass produced. So there's a lot more potential risk, but I don't see anywhere in the Bible where that's changed, or it said, hey, in a couple thousand years, stop doing this, or don't offer aid to those in need, right? So one of the things is I don't think that people should do that. This is why I'm a liberal. I think because there's some safety concerns, right, that we should, though, still honor that tradition because it's a good tradition, and we should seek out a community that does that. Well, right now, we don't have a community that does that.
But right, that just leads to my last question. Why do you do you really think people let's just be honest, they're just going to be bad people out there. People will take advantage of nice people.
Certainly.
That would do something like
yes.
that. And I mean, to my knowledge, that the history of these immigrants, they're not coming with good intentions. So if you know this person, let's say you have a person like Judas that might show up to your doorstep, would you really take that risk? I understand, I go off probability, not possibility, if that makes sense. So
yeah, and the probability is that they're unlikely to be a bad person.
Exactly.
Right?
So if
but the risk is high, right? The frequency is low. The severity is high.
We're talking about illegals here, though. If they're coming with bad intentions, in my opinion. Otherwise, they would not be coming in illegally. You see what I'm saying? So
but how would you know that they're an illegal immigrant?
Because if they didn't have, are you
going to ask any stranger at the door for their documentation?
No, I would not. But at the end of the day, if I knew their intentions were good, they would present me with at least their name and their intentions. An illegal immigrant is going to do that.
Let me shift the story a little bit. So, right now we could both agree. Some guy shows up at our door in the middle of the night. We're probably both going to not open it. I'll pretend I'm not here or something like that. Or I might start filming it with my Ring camera, whatever the case may be, right? That's what we do today, right? Because we have a high level of distrust. There's a lot of risk or severity issues. I would actually be curious how they walked as far out away from the city to get to my house. But if you shifted that just for a moment and you envision maybe it's a little kid, it's 9 years old. Right, the person's 9 years old, or maybe it's a little kid, two little kids and two adults, a man and a woman. They've got a boy and a girl with them, and they come to your door. Mm-hmm. It seems less risky, right? Immediately, just from the story change.
But at 9 at night, though, anyone with common sense
carrying luggage, they don't have any place to stay. You're the only house nearby with a light on. I mean, it's not inconceivable. But would you actually?
We don't know if they're illegal or not, though.
Sure, but would you actually stop and potentially have a conversation with them versus the one solo just guy outside?
If it wasn't 9 at night, yes, I would. But if it's 9 at night, then that's kind of putting my, safety at risk.
Okay.
You feel what I'm saying?
And that's a difference of opinion. If I were to see this, I would probably immediately assume, and I could be wrong, and it could be to my detriment, but I would immediately assume this is a family. Families are, there's got to be something dire that's happened to them, and that's why they're stuck outside my house, right? So I would at least go to them and ask them, hey, what's going on? Can I help you out with something? I might even pay to put them up in a hotel so they're not staying here if they didn't have money. And I might be the sucker for it. Right. But at the end of the day, those two 9-year-olds are now taken care of. And I was a sucker, but who cares? I was able to help two 9-year-olds. Right. But best case scenario, they were truthful, even slightly truthful. And I was able to help a family for a day, a week, whatever the case may be, whatever I could, manage to do. Right. Mm-hmm. And again, I might not let them stay in my house, but I might try and create an alternative.
You'll try to help them. Yeah.
Right.
That's a really interesting point, man.
And I'll tell you a story. And this was remarkable to me because I don't think I would do this to this day. And I still very much wish I would. I hope I was this kind of person, right? This is the dream. And I met this family when I was very young. And this guy, I won't say his name just in case he might listen to it or someone else may hear. But his family was wealthy enough that he was learning piano when he was 6-7 year old. They had a grand piano in their front house. They had this nice fountain in front of their house. I mean, it was a fantastic place. I lived in a rural community that was mostly Hispanic, and there was a rich area. I was not a part of that, but I had some friends in the area, right? And they were, I want to say they were from Asia. Somewhere. I want to say they're Chinese. They could have been something else. I apologize to them in advance for misremembering. But I I was at their house one day and I was like looking at the grand piano and I was there because we were reading partners. So I would do reading studies with my friend who went to the same elementary school as me.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him, I was like, man, that fountain outside is like really cool. It's very detailed. Like, who did that? And he started telling me this story. His dad met a homeless guy. And the guy had a sign that said, "We'll work for food." And he walked up to him and he said, "Do you mean it?"
Right.
And the guy was like, "I do very much mean it." He's like, "Okay, well, I've got some tasks around the house that I could do that I think you could do. And let's bring you over there and I'll get you some food." Right. So he did that one day. And then he set him up, actually, just like I said, in kind of a nearby hotel. It could have been a motel or something like that. The specific details not important.
Mm-hmm.
And he started to interact with this guy, right, more and more, and brought him over and kept having him do stuff. Well, it turns out this guy had an amazing craft, right? He actually was a landscaper previously. He was like a minor sculptor. He could do cement work, that kind of stuff. And he built him.
Very talented, right?
Yeah, they built him as a gift, this fountain. And the guy never bragged about it. His dad never talked about it. He never said, "This is what I did. Look at me," right? The end of the story goes, he gave the guy a suit, asked him, "Hey, I can't at this point help you anymore, but I hope that this sets you up well, that I hope this teaches you that there's people still out there that'll give you a chance. Here's a suit. So you can go and try and get a job and you can continue to work for food like any dignified person out there, and you don't have to be on the street
That's
anymore."
a really good person, man.
Right? It's a really good person, right? And I
Sure.
wish, like, I was that person. I wish I was that wealthy, even at this point in time, and could do that kind of thing.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
like,
You and me both.
like that's our ideal, right? We both hear that story and we both go, "Wow, man, this guy, like,
Yeah.
that's a good guy," right? So this is where the disconnect is, and this is the problem. When those people come through the border, we have only two choices. We can assume the vast majority of them are criminals and turn them all away, including the potential of the 9-year-old kids and the parents that are out there. Or we can create some kind of vetting process that we know is not perfect to
Mm-hmm.
only allow in a minimum number of criminals in the hopes that we're allowing in the maximum number of families and kids who are in desperate need. Now, I agree that if we were in a situation where that $1 that goes to them, or however, $100, $1,000, whatever it happens to be, would have instead gone to the families of poor people in the United States, then I would say, because we're in the United States, that money needs to go to the citizens of the United States first, right?
Exactly.
But we're not in that situation because nobody does that. It's not about spending it on the American people. Even the GOP will admit this in their actions, right? It's not about spending it on the American people or spending it to help other people from foreign countries. That's not the or. It's either don't spend that to help anyone, and likely it buffers some kind of tax break to corporations, or spend it to help these people who are foreign in aid, because our state laws prevent us from helping the people internally. The federal government can't come in and help someone in Illinois.
Right.
The federal government can only give Illinois the money to say, try and help your people, and they get to decide what they want to do, right? But they can help the kids coming across the border. That can be a unilateral federal decision.
Right. But I mean, like I said, me and the young lady said earlier, man, like this is just my last remarks. Like, I mean, these aren't really kids, what I'm saying, crossing the border. And me personally, I just feel like if they do want to come with good intentions, they would come legally. That's all I'm saying. Like, you can enter the country, you know what I'm saying, with your name, with your intentions, where you want to work, what's your craft, you know what I'm saying? So I just feel like it's always a good way to do everything. You know what I'm saying? And if
Sure.
you're going to be entering someone's country and you know that, say you speak a different language, or you know that your country might not have the best reputation when it comes to this other country, so you have to try to, give yourself a good reputation, then I would just take that, I would really just consider that, like I honestly would not try to go in illegally at all. When I know that the problem, well, I'm not even just saying America just have a border problem. Canada has a border problem. Like a lot of countries have border problems, but I just feel like everybody think that America is the land of the free and nothing's free here. You know what I'm saying? So they feel like they could just come here. Right. So it's just like they feel like everybody can just come here, get a free house, get free food, get this, that, and the third. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, we have to pay for all that, me and you, and you know what I'm saying, and Amber as well. So I mean, me personally, I just feel like just come legally. And if you aren't doing anything bad, if you're not trying to traffic drugs, if you're not trying to traffic children, if you aren't trying to blow us up, you know what I'm saying? Then there's nothing wrong with getting documented and just entering the country legally. Like now it's about to be to a point where there are more people coming in through trains and planes more illegally than legally now. So now we're about to have more illegal immigrants entering the country than legal immigrants. I think we're already, if not there already.
So, and I'll make this the last remarks on immigration for me. What I would say is that if it were realistic for the person to do that, then I agree. Like if we could clear some of the obstacles from people to be able to get documented, not necessarily become citizens or anything like that, but become documented, so that we could get them as part of the official tax base, we could get them in and vet them correctly, right? If we could do that at any kind of speed, that would alleviate some of those fears and concerns.
Well, they have translators. They have translators. They have people who get in contact with family members. You know
Sure.
what I'm saying? Like
But what I'm saying is that like it's not a person usually coming in from, I mean, they're coming through the Mexico border, but it's not usually a person coming in from Mexico. They're coming in from Venezuela, they're coming in from Honduras, they're coming in from
Mexico.
No, I know. But like Mexico doesn't want them in Mexico. Right. So they're in a situation where either they keep going or they have to go back. And quite frankly, like if I was living in a town that was just like filled with, nothing but gangs, and they would just shoot people's houses, and they just shoot people's cars, right? I would leave. I would just get up and go, right? Like there's nothing that's going to keep me there. And if the next city over said, man, you got up and went, and we need to have you wait, years of time to get processed into this city. So you can either like camp outside on the on the edge of danger, or you may be forced to try and sneak in and steal food. What's the person to do? So I get it. On our side, I wish we had a better process, and I don't think that people should just come here illegally. I agree with you. On their side, the people with good intentions have to necessarily look like people with bad intentions, because they're trying to escape something terrible. And I think if we had a better system to be able to vet that and be able to track that in a quick order, well, guess what? I would be on board for that. Right. And that was something that was trying to be done, at least in part. And whether for, good reasons, bad reasons, I don't think any bill gets submitted because of good reasons anymore. But the GOP and, the Democrat and Republican combined bipartisan bill about the border actually had money in it to establish more people at the border, more staff to be able to do this kind of stuff, to be able to actually vet the people coming in, be able to actually check the people who are trying to go across the border, to be able to catch the people and see if they need to send them back, right? But it got shot down. Now, in part, it had a bunch of money for Ukraine and Israel and all sorts of other things like that, because that's also a big concern for the Democrats, and everyone's trying to leverage everybody else in order to get these things in.
Gaza as well, because they're funding them as well now.
Oh, sure, in part. I mean, but like the Gaza aid's really tiny. I don't know if you read the bill. $6 billion
is tiny.
Well, did you read the bill? Because like it's $6 billion of it, a lot. So a lot of the Israel, the border bill, a lot of the Israel and Gaza stuff is linked to Israel. Like it goes through Israel still.
But they got 13. They have 13 billion going to Ukraine. I think they have 16 billion going to Gaza. They have another 13 going to Israel. You know what I'm saying? Like they have 2 billion going to Red Sea conflicts. There's all kinds.
It's all kinds of money. There's tons of money going all sorts of different places. And when I was starting to read it, because it was the border bill.
Why not the border though?
But the border does have money in it. You just have to get to page 30.
Probably 10 billion, but that's it. Why is Israel and Ukraine getting more on the border bill than the actual border? That's what I'm saying.
I can tell you the real answer to that question if you want, which is not an answer that either the Democrats or the Republicans really like. And that's the fact that Israel, being on our side, whether we like it or not, whether we like them or not, them being an ally to us is more important to our safety.
That's
because
the
of all the
only
things we've done
ally
in the world.
we have in the Middle East, though.
Exactly. That's exactly the reason why we spend so much money on them, right? And well, to be fair, like we also learn a bunch of stuff. So we learned like desalination techniques from the Israel, which like American people paid for. This is a big problem, right? We spend money into our universities with taxes. Those universities go on to do research for pharmaceutical companies, and the pharmaceutical companies get a profit for it. We spend our taxes and send it to Israel, and Israel does a bunch of R&D to learn, create a defense matrix to be able to create desalination stuff to be able to get us things, and we don't get a profit from that. I very much agree that the United States citizenry is getting shafted when it comes to tax dollars. However, I also agree with the military intelligence that basically says if Israel is not there to be at the top tier of its technology to be able to defend itself, people are going to attack us. And that's probably because of bad stuff we've done in the past, and also for just things that people assume we've done in the past. Right?
Now, when you say people are going to attack us, I mean, who are those people?
Sure. I think if we stop paying money to Israel, I think even Israel might attack us. But everybody, like, there's other places, other countries in there, like Saudi Arabia, you got Egypt, you've got Iran, right? Like, lots of people have a long history with the United States where we did a lot of bad stuff to them. They did a lot of bad stuff to us. I mean, Iran, we were literally selling them money, them weapons, so that they could fight Iraq, who was our official ally in the 1980s.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're not above board on this. And we did that. Why? Well, it's a great way to make a buck. Right?
Yeah, and it's a great way to get a vote as well.
Yeah, of course. And I mean that, we had Ronald Reagan in the office at that time, right? So like we have a long history of doing bad stuff all over the world, but we also have a long history of defending places in the world. That I don't think this is like a checkbook where you balance it, right? Like we really need to deplete one of those things really fast. Right. But we need to also buffer like at home, and we need to, like if we were just doing good acts around the world, I think we'd be a lot safer anyways. But then we just have like places like Russia disliking us. Right. But yeah, anyways, that's to me, that bill really said these are our priorities on both parties. By the way, both parties are more concerned about Israel and Ukraine and them being able to defend us, the vast majority of the members, than they are about the border. The border is just something that hits home because there are certain people who get to see it, and it's big in the news. But it's not even as bad as a lot of people are making it out to be. It is bad, but it's definitely being exaggerated. The Ukraine war and Israel war are a lot, they're being downplayed. They're way worse than they actually look in our media. So we feel okay.
Yeah, I know war is terrible. War is definitely terrible. And I would just argue that this is my last thing because we got it because it's been an hour and stuff like that. But I would argue that I mean, Ukraine, if we didn't really fund Ukraine, I don't really think that we have to worry about Russia attacking us really, because like how our country is set up, like there will be honestly no way that Russia could attack us really. And then as far as with Ukraine, I mean, let's just be honest, Russia already took like one third of Ukraine is just gone. Let's just be honest, one third of Ukraine is gone. So I mean, would it really benefit us to have an ally like Ukraine at that point? Because I honestly feel like Trump and Putin actually became really, I'm not going to say they were friends or anything like that,
but they were much more likable to one another than
and you know what I'm saying, just a way to just use each other to where it wouldn't be any just people dying in the Middle East or just anywhere in general. You know what I'm saying? So I just feel like, I mean, Russia isn't really an issue. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, and if it was, I mean, the people will really know that. I think China is more of an issue than Russia. Like, I think China is the number one issue, if we're being honest. But that's going to be a topic for another day, man.
Right. But, no, and I'll just say this really quickly on that. The reason why we're so concerned about Russia is twofold. One, we get to test our technology in Ukraine. So our drones, right? It's all our drones. It's all our communication stuff. We get to test that. And we know we're going to be outnumbered, right, in a war against China. So China's got a much bigger military than we do, and an almost similarly technologically advanced military. So this is a really great test for our technology to be able to defend against a numbers superior group, but technologically similar military. And the second thing I would say is that the war in Ukraine has done at least one thing for the United States, which has made us the gas and oil exporter of the world.
Right.
Russia used to be that. So Russia had all of Europe basically tied to its energy, and now they're tied to us, which means we've bolstered our defenses in any upcoming conflicts. So that's why Ukraine is important. To be really cynical, I don't think we would be in the Ukraine war if we didn't have those two pieces. If we weren't making money as a country, whether or not people are making the money individually, but as a country, establishing ourselves and keeping ourselves economically powerful. And two, if we didn't have a vested interest in testing our military prowess, I think we would have just sort of set back and been like, okay, you know, and that's unfortunate. And I think that just shows like maybe the differences in the administrations. Like the prior administration didn't really see this as a strategic interest, but the current administration and probably the current military leaders, not necessarily the administration itself in either of these cases, is going, no, wait, it's more complicated than that. We need to defend them. And I don't think that that's just being shared with the United States citizenry in that kind of direct fashion.
Okay, I think a lot of people will find that interesting, man. But that's all the time we got for today, guys.
No worries.
And make sure you guys check out Danny. I don't know if you want to drop some social media links or anything for the people so they can check you out.
Sure. So I'm just at Caffeine Zombies. You can find me on Twitter or YouTube. Yeah.
Okay, man. So make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button, man. And we will see you guys next time. And I am out. Peace.
Thanks.